Jake Morrison shuffled forward in the security line at Galactic Transit Hub, rolling his stiff shoulders. 6 months of swinging hammers on a backwater mining colony had left him sore, tired, and desperately craving his own bed back on Earth. The line moved slowly as usual, filled with dozens of alien species he'd learned to recognize over the years. A family of Centaurians with their 4 arms juggling luggage. A massive Croton merchant arguing loudly into a translator device. Just another day in the galaxy's busiest transportation hub. He checked his duffel bag one more time. Clean clothes, a few books, some worthless mining company souvenirs he'd bought for his niece. Nothing exciting. Nothing valuable. Nothing that should cause problems at security. The checkpoint ahead buzzed with the usual controlled chaos. Security officers from at least 6 different species manned scanning stations, their various eyes and sensors checking passengers for weapons, contraband, and proper identification. Standard procedure. Jake had been through this checkpoint maybe 30 times over the past few years. He knew the drill by heart. The line shuffled forward again. Jake found himself standing before a Vexillian officer, a mantis-like creature with compound eyes that reflected light in weird purple patterns. The officer's translator box crackled to life with a bored, mechanical voice. Identification card. Place hand on scanner for biometric verification. Jake pulled out his ID with his right hand and placed his left palm on the glowing blue surface of the scanner. The machine hummed, running its checks. Retinal scan first, causing a brief flash of green light that made him blink. Then genetic markers, cross-referencing his DNA against the Galactic Citizen database. Finally, the general body scan to check for implants, weapons, or biological hazards. Everything processed smoothly. Jake watched the officer's screen flash green confirmation symbols. Almost done. Just a few more seconds and he'd be through, heading to Gate 17 for his transport home. The scanner's blue light swept down his arm one final time, passing over his left forearm just below where his sleeve ended. There, barely visible under the fluorescent station lights, sat a faded geometric tattoo. Just some intersecting lines forming an abstract pattern. Jake had gotten so used to it over the years that he barely remembered it was there anymore. The scanner hit the tattoo. Everything went wrong at once. The machine didn't beep. It didn't buzz. It screamed. A high-pitched electronic wail that cut through the ambient noise of the terminal like a knife. Every head in the checkpoint area turned toward the sound. The Vexillian officer's antennae shot straight up in alarm. Red emergency lights erupted from the scanner, flooding the entire checkpoint in crimson. Jake jerked his hand back instinctively, but the damage was already done. Every screen within 50 feet started flickering violently. The display on the scanning station fragmented into cascading error messages, warning symbols appearing in languages Jake recognized and dozens he didn't. Then the text appeared. Big. Bold. Impossible to miss. Written in Galactic Standard and automatically translated into every major language in the known galaxy. Military record classification level exceeds station authority. Biometric marker detected, Omega Black clearance. System access denied, escalating to Galactic Security Command. The Vexillian officer stumbled backward, nearly tripping over its own legs. Its translator box sputtered in panicked confusion. This is not possible. This is not possible. Sir, please, you must remain exactly where you are standing. Jake closed his eyes and let out a long, defeated sigh. Ah hell. Alarm klaxons started blaring throughout the terminal. Massive blast doors began descending from the ceiling with hydraulic hisses, sealing off the checkpoint area from the rest of the station. Passengers screamed and scattered, grabbing children and luggage as armed security personnel came running from every direction. Within 30 seconds, Jake found himself surrounded by a dozen heavily armed guards representing at least 4 different species. Their weapons weren't pointed at him exactly, but they weren't pointed away either. The guards looked confused, uncertain, like they'd responded to an emergency but had no idea what kind of threat they were actually facing. A massive Karath security chief pushed through the crowd, his 4 muscular arms flexing as he approached. Karaths were warriors by nature, covered in natural armor plating and built like living tanks. This one had scars across his face that suggested he'd seen serious combat. 3 commendation medals hung from his uniform harness. The chief looked at Jake, then at the still screaming scanner, then back at Jake. His translator delivered his words in a deep, gravelly tone. What are you? Just a construction worker, sir, Jake said calmly, raising both hands slightly to show he wasn't armed. Just trying to get home to Earth. The chief's 4 eyes narrowed. He moved to the scanner station and placed one massive hand on the controls, attempting to override whatever had triggered the alarm. His claws clicked against the keyboard as he entered what were probably high-level security codes. Access denied appeared on the screen in letters half a foot tall. The chief tried again. Different codes this time. Higher authority. Access denied, insufficient clearance level. The chief's armored skin flushed a darker shade of purple, which Jake had learned meant confusion or frustration in Karaths. The massive alien tried one more time, entering what must have been his absolute highest level command codes. The screen flickered. For a moment it looked like the override might work. Then new text appeared. Alert transmitted to Galactic Security Council Central Command. Priority quantum communication link established. Awaiting instructions from Tier 1 authority. The chief stepped back from the console like it had grown teeth. In 15 years of station security, he'd never seen anything trigger a direct line to Galactic Command. Even terrorist threats didn't automatically activate quantum comm channels. Those were reserved for species-level emergencies, potential first contact situations, or threats to entire solar systems. He turned back to Jake, and this time there was genuine uncertainty in his expression. Not fear exactly, but the kind of wariness that came from realizing you were way out of your depth. "Sir," the chief said carefully, his tone completely different from before. "I am going to need you to come with me to a secure holding area. For your safety and ours. We need to determine what has happened here." Jake nodded slowly. "Yeah, I figured. Got any coffee where we're going?" "I will have some brought." "Then lead the way, Chief." As security escorted him away from the checkpoint, Jake caught sight of his reflection in a window. Just a regular guy in worn work clothes with calloused hands and tired eyes. Nothing special. Nothing that should make galactic security systems lose their minds. His left hand drifted unconsciously to his forearm, fingers brushing over the geometric tattoo hidden beneath his sleeve. Just some lines. Just some memories. Just ghosts from a war nobody knew had happened. He had a feeling it was going to be a very long day. The holding room wasn't a cell, which Jake appreciated. It had a decent couch, a table bolted to the floor, and a large window overlooking the station's main docking bay. Ships of every size and design came and went in silence beyond the reinforced glass. The coffee they brought him was terrible, but at least it was hot. Jake had been sitting there for maybe 40 minutes when the door finally opened. He expected another security officer, maybe someone higher up the chain, to ask him the same questions over and over. Instead he got something different. The woman who entered was tall and slim, with blue skin that shimmered slightly under the overhead lights. A centauri if Jake remembered his species correctly. She wore a crisp uniform with insignia he didn't recognize, and carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from years of getting answers from people who didn't want to give them. "Mr. Morrison," she said, her voice smooth through the translator device at her collar. "I am Investigator Kree of Galactic Intelligence. Do you mind if I sit?" "It's your station," Jake said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She sat down gracefully and placed a data pad on the table between them. Her eyes were large and golden, with vertical pupils that contracted slightly as she studied him. "I am going to be direct with you, Mr. Morrison. In my 12 years with Galactic Intelligence, I have never seen a security system respond the way it did to your biometric scan. I have clearance to access classified military records from 47 different member species. I have investigated espionage cases, war crimes, and interstellar smuggling operations. I know how security protocols work." Jake took a sip of the terrible coffee and waited. He'd learned a long time ago that sometimes the best response was no response at all. Kree tapped her datapad and the screen glowed to life. "I am now going to access your military service record through official channels. Whatever triggered that alarm, I will find the explanation." Her fingers moved across the screen with practiced efficiency, entering codes and passwords that probably took years to earn. The datapad screen flickered. Text appeared. "Restricted, authorization level Omega Black. Access denied." Kree's blue skin shifted through several shades, settling on something darker. Jake recognized the expression even across species lines. Confusion mixed with frustration. She tried again using what must have been higher-level access codes. The same message appeared, followed by something new. Inquiry logged and flagged. Unauthorized access attempt recorded. "That is not possible," Kree muttered, more to herself than to Jake. "Omega Black clearance does not exist in any official database. There is no authorization level above Tier 5 special access." "Clearly there is," Jake said mildly. She looked up sharply. "You are not surprised. You knew this would happen. I hoped the system would have been updated by now." "Guess not." Cree leaned forward, her golden eyes intense. What unit did you serve with? What operations require this level of classification? Before Jake could answer, her communicator chimed. Not the standard tone for messages, but a sharp, urgent sound that made her go very still. She lifted the device to her ear, and Jake watched her expression change as she listened to whoever was on the other end. Yes, I understand, she said quietly. But I must insist on some explanation. This is my investigation and I have full authority to pursue leads regarding station security breaches. Pause. Her skin darkened further. I see. When will they arrive? Another pause. Very well. She lowered the communicator and stared at Jake with something that might have been respect or might have been suspicion. Hard to tell. That was Admiral Hayes of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. A man I have met exactly once, 3 years ago at a classified summit on border security. He has personally ordered me to cease all questioning and await a retrieval team that is apparently already en route. Fast response time, Jake noted. Indeed. Too fast. Which means they were already monitoring the situation before I even entered this room. She set down the data pad and folded her hands on the table. You are going to tell me something, Mr. Morrison? Not because I am ordering you to, but because I think you want someone to understand. What did you do that requires this level of secrecy? Jake looked out the window at the passing ships. A bulk freighter drifted by, its hull scarred from decades of hard use. Somewhere out there, beyond the bright lights of civilized space, there were places the galaxy had forgotten about. Places that had never made it onto official star charts. Places where things happened that most people couldn't imagine. You ever hear stories about ghost ships? He asked quietly. Stations that went dark for no reason? Colonies that just stopped transmitting one day? Urban legends. Spacer tales meant to frighten new recruits. Yeah. That's what we wanted people to think. Jake turned back to face her. See, about 40 years ago humanity was still pretty new to all this. We were expanding fast, setting up colonies wherever we could find livable planets. And we started noticing a pattern. Every so often a colony would go silent. Not destroyed. Not abandoned. Just silent. Kree's translator hummed softly as she processed this. Equipment failure. Pirates. Natural disasters. There are many explanations. That's what we thought at first. But then we sent investigation teams. You know what they found? What? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Buildings intact. Power still running. Food still on tables. But every single person just gone. No bodies. No signs of struggle. No clues. Like someone had come along and just erased everyone from existence. The investigator's skin had gone very pale. You are describing the vanishing events. Those are conspiracy theories. Fringe science fiction. They're real, Jake said flatly. And humanity figured out pretty quick that we couldn't tell anyone. We weren't even part of the Galactic Council yet. If we started screaming about colonies disappearing, we'd look crazy. Or worse, we'd start a panic that could destabilize the entire region. Kree was quiet for a long moment. So what did you do? We created a unit. No official designation. No records. People who were willing to go into the dark places and figure out what was happening. We called ourselves Phantoms because that's what we were. Ghosts fighting ghosts. And the tattoo? Jake pushed up his left sleeve, revealing the geometric pattern in full. Under the room's lights, it seemed to shimmer slightly as if the ink itself was special. Each line represents someone who didn't come back. 37 names. 37 friends who died fighting something the galaxy doesn't even know exists. Kree reached out slowly, then stopped herself before touching the tattoo. What was it? What were you fighting? That's the part one can't tell you. Not because I don't want to, but because knowing doesn't help. We contained it. Pushed it back. That's what matters. Contained. Not destroyed. Some things can't be destroyed. You just have to keep them away from the light. Her communicator chimed again. She glanced at it and sighed. Your retrieval team has docked. They are on their way here now. She stood up, smoothing her uniform. This is not over, Mr. Morrison. I will find answers. Maybe, Jake said. But sometimes the answers are worse than the questions. The door opened, and Jake knew without looking that his past had just walked back into his present. Some things you could run from. Some things always caught up. He finished the terrible coffee and stood to face whatever came next. The ship that appeared on the station sensors 12 hours later was unlike anything most of the traffic control crew had ever seen. It wasn't invisible exactly, but it had a way of making eyes slide right past it. The hull absorbed light instead of reflecting it, creating a visual blank spot that sensors struggled to lock onto. Even the station's advanced tracking systems kept losing it, only to find it again seconds later in a slightly different position. When it transmitted its docking codes, the station administrator's face went from curious to terrified in about 3 seconds. He approved the docking request immediately, no questions asked, and personally cleared a private bay usually reserved for diplomatic vessels. Whatever those codes meant, they carried weight that went beyond normal military authority. Investigator Cree watched from the security office as 4 figures emerged from the unmarked ship. 3 humans and 1 alien she couldn't immediately identify. They all wore civilian clothes, ordinary jackets and pants that could have belonged to anyone. But the way they moved told a different story. Every step was deliberate. Every glance around the docking bay calculated threat assessments and exit routes. These were people who had spent so long in dangerous places that caution had become automatic. The woman leading them was maybe in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and a thin scar running along her jawline. She walked like someone who'd been in charge for so long that authority was just part of her breathing. When station security tried to intercept her, she simply held up a small credential case. Whatever was inside made the guard step back immediately. Cree left the security office and intercepted them in the main corridor. "I am Investigator Cree, Galactic Intelligence. You must be the retrieval team." The dark-haired woman stopped and gave Cree a measuring look. "Colonel Lisa Grant, Human Special Operations. Where is Morrison?" "In a secure holding area on level 9. Before you take him, I need some answers. That incident at the checkpoint triggered protocols I have never seen activated. The system transmitted directly to Galactic Command. Whatever Mr. Morrison is involved in goes beyond standard military classification." Grant's expression didn't change. "You're right. It does. Which is exactly why we're taking him and why you're going to seal those records under Security Protocol 777. That protocol is reserved for matters of pangalactic security. It requires council approval. Check your messages, Investigator. I think you'll find the approval came through about 10 minutes ago." Cree pulled out her datapad and scanned through recent communications. Sure enough, there it was. A council directive issued under emergency powers, authorizing the classification of all materials related to Incident Report Station 794 Delta. Her investigation was being shut down from the very top. She looked back at Grant. "I do not accept this. Something is happening that the galaxy has a right to know about." One of the other humans, a younger man with burn scars on his hands, spoke up. "The galaxy has a right to sleep safely at night. Sometimes those two things don't go together." Grant held up a hand. "Take Morrison to the ship. I'll handle this." The team moved past Cree with professional efficiency. She considered stopping them but knew it would be pointless. Whatever authority they carried went beyond her pay grade. Instead, she followed Grant into a nearby conference room. Once the door sealed behind them, Grant pulled out a small device and pressed a button. A high-pitched tone filled the room for 3 seconds, then stopped. "Interference generator. We're not being recorded now. That is illegal on a galactic transit station. So is a lot of what I do. Sit down, Investigator. You want answers. I'm going to give you some. Not all of them. Not even most of them. But enough that maybe you'll understand why some secrets need to stay buried." Cree sat, her curiosity overriding her frustration. Grant activated a holographic projector built into the table. A star map appeared, showing the familiar layout of explored space. Hundreds of systems connected by trade routes and communication relays. The civilized galaxy in all its glory. Then Grant pressed another button. Dark spots appeared on the map. Dozens of them scattered throughout what were supposed to be empty or unexplored regions. Each dark spot pulsed with a faint red glow. "These are anomalous readings collected over the past 50 years, Grant explained. Energy signatures that don't match any known technology. Quantum distortions that shouldn't be possible according to our understanding of physics. Signal patterns that suggest intelligence but don't correspond to any known species." Cree leaned forward, studying the map. "I have never seen this data. Why was Galactic Intelligence not informed? Because we weren't sure what we were looking at. And because by the time we figured it out, telling people would have caused more problems than it solved." Grant zoomed in on one cluster of dark spots near what used to be human colonial space. 43 years ago, we lost contact with a mining colony called New Vancouver. Population about 15,000. We sent an investigation team. What did they find? Everything exactly where it should be. Homes intact. Vehicles parked. Equipment still running. But every single person was gone. No bodies. No blood. No signs of violence. Just empty buildings with half-eaten meals on tables and children's toys scattered in the streets. A chill ran down Kree's spine. The vanishing events. Those are myths. Spacer stories. They're real. New Vancouver was just the first we know about. Over the next 10 years, it happened 6 more times. Different locations. Different colonies. Same result. Thousands of people just erased from existence. Grant pulled up another image, this one showing what looked like sensor logs. We eventually detected a pattern. Each disappearance was preceded by these quantum distortions appearing in the area. Something was coming into our space from somewhere else. Somewhere that doesn't show up on any sensors until it's too late. What was it? We called it the silence. Not because it was quiet, but because that's what it left behind. Absolute silence. We tracked it for years trying to understand it. And eventually we realized it was intelligent. It was hunting. Kree's hands had gone cold. Why am I only learning about this now? Because we stopped it. Or more accurately, people like Morrison stopped it. Grant pulled up a list of names on the holographic display. Hundreds of them. We created a unit. No official designation. No government oversight. Just volunteers who were willing to go into the darkest parts of space and face something that shouldn't exist. The Phantoms. You've been doing your homework? Yes. The Phantoms. They spent 15 years tracking the silence. Fighting it when they could. Running when they couldn't. Learning its patterns. Finding its weaknesses. Grant's voice grew quieter. Out of 400 original volunteers, only 73 came back. Morrison was one of them. The holographic display shifted, showing the geometric pattern of Jake's tattoo. Each line in that design represents someone who died during the operations. 37 people from his specific unit. He carries their names on his skin because there are no monuments, no medals, no official recognition. But you defeated this silence? Grant's expression hardened. We contained it, pushed it back to the outer edges of mapped space, created monitoring stations that watch for those quantum distortions, set up early warning systems. But it's not destroyed, investigator. It's just waiting. And the tattoos? The clearance levels? The biometric markers serve 2 purposes. First, they identify people who have direct experience fighting the silence. If it ever comes back, we need to know where our experienced personnel are. Second, they're a memorial. A way to remember people who saved billions of lives but can never be acknowledged. Kree sat back, processing everything. It was too much. Too big. The Council should know. The galaxy should be warned. To what end? So people can panic? So every unexplained equipment failure becomes evidence of the silence returning? We have monitoring systems. We have protocols. We have people watching. Grant leaned forward. Sometimes, investigator, the best way to protect people is to let them believe the monsters aren't real. Outside, through the conference room window, Kree could see the unmarked ship preparing for departure. Jake Morrison was somewhere on board, heading back to whatever life he'd built for himself after the war nobody knew about. Grant stood to leave, then paused. You're good at your job, investigator. You don't give up. You ask the right questions. Those are rare qualities. She placed a small data chip on the table. Think about what I've told you. And if you decide that knowing the truth is worth living in the shadows, there's contact information on that chip. You are recruiting me? I'm offering you a choice. Go back to your normal investigations. File your report. Seal the records. Forget this ever happened. Or accept that some wars never really end and some soldiers never really come home. Grant moved toward the door. Either way, the watch continues. Kree sat alone in the conference room for a long time after Grant left, staring at the data chip on the table like it might explode. Through the window, she watched the unmarked ship detach from its docking clamp and drift silently toward the station's exit corridor. In a few minutes, it would jump to faster-than-light speed and disappear, taking Jake Morrison and his secrets with it. She reached for the chip, then stopped. Her entire career had been built on finding truth, on exposing lies and bringing hidden things into the light. But what Grant had shown her challenged everything she thought she understood about how the galaxy worked. Could it really be true that humanity had fought and won a war against something so dangerous that even acknowledging its existence was considered too risky? Her communicator buzzed. A message from her supervisor asking for a preliminary report on the security incident. Standard procedure. She had maybe an hour before people started asking serious questions about what had happened at that checkpoint. Kree made a decision. She picked up the data chip and slipped it into her datapad. The chip didn't contain much. Just a set of coordinates in neutral space, a quantum-encrypted communication protocol, and a single line of text that read, "When you are ready." No threats. No pressure. Just an open door. She cleared the data from her screen and began composing her official report. Security incident involving outdated biometric scanning protocols. Human citizen with legacy military clearance from pre-council era. Issue resolved through proper diplomatic channels. Recommend system updates to prevent similar false alerts. All records sealed per council directive under Protocol 777. It was technically true. Every word of it. Just not the whole truth. She submitted the report and tried to go back to her normal duties. For 3 days she succeeded. She reviewed shipping manifests. Investigated a minor smuggling operation involving illegal pharmaceuticals. Interviewed witnesses about a theft in the commercial district. Regular work. Safe work. The kind of investigations where the worst thing that happened was some criminal went to prison. But at night she kept thinking about that star map. Those dark spots pulsing with unknown energy. The list of names scrolling past on Grant's holographic display. Hundreds of people who had died fighting something the galaxy didn't know existed. On the 4th day, Cree did something she hadn't done in years. She called in sick and spent the day in her apartment, running searches through every database she could access legally and a few she probably shouldn't have touched. The vanishing events weren't hard to find once you knew what to look for. She found 23 separate incidents over a 40-year period where colonies or stations had gone silent with no clear explanation. Official reports blamed equipment failures, pirate raids, natural disasters. But the pattern was there if you looked closely enough. Each incident preceded by unusual sensor readings. Each investigation finding infrastructure intact but populations missing. She dug deeper, finding references in old military communications to something called Operation Dark Harbor. The files were heavily redacted, but she could piece together fragments. References to non-standard threat assessment. Mentions of quantum-level hostile contact. Budget allocations for deep space reconnaissance units that seemed way too large for normal exploration. Then she found something that made her blood run cold. A leaked medical report from 30 years ago, documenting the treatment of a human soldier who had been found floating in an escape pod near the edge of explored space. The soldier was catatonic, unresponsive to all stimuli. But the medical scans showed something impossible. His cells were deteriorating at the quantum level, breaking down in ways that violated known physics. The report noted that he died 6 hours after being found, and his body had to be disposed of in a specialized containment facility. The soldier's name had been redacted, but his unit designation was still visible in one corner of the document. Phantom 7. Cree sat back from her computer, her hands shaking slightly. Grant hadn't been lying. This was all real. Humanity had encountered something out in the dark that was so far beyond normal threats that even talking about it was dangerous. She thought about her career again. About the promotions she'd worked toward. The respect she'd earned from colleagues. The comfortable life she'd built investigating crimes that made sense, that had clear perpetrators and victims and solutions. Then she thought about those names on Grant's list. People who had given up everything to fight a war in silence. People who had died protecting a galaxy that would never know their names. Her communicator buzzed again. Another routine assignment. A merchant vessel wanted to file a complaint about station docking fees. Boring. Safe. Normal. Cree looked at the data chip still sitting on her desk. She picked it up and rolled it between her fingers, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. What kind of investigator was she, really? The kind who only pursued comfortable truths? Or the kind who followed the evidence no matter where it led? She opened a secure communication channel using the protocols from the chip. The connection took almost a minute to establish, routing through what must have been dozens of relay points to hide the origin and destination. Finally, a voice answered. Not Grant's voice. Someone else. Mel. Come. Professional. Verification code? Cree read off the string of numbers and letters that had appeared on her data pad when she'd activated the chip. Pause. She could hear typing in the background. Code confirmed. Investigator Cree, this is a secure line. Do you understand that by using this communication protocol, you are expressing interest in recruitment for classified operations? Her mouth felt dry. Yes. Are you currently under duress or coercion? No. This is my choice. More typing. Understood. Someone will make contact with you within 72 hours. Until then, maintain your normal routine. Tell no one about this communication. If you change your mind before contact is made, destroy the chip and forget you ever received it. Do you have any questions? Cree had about 1,000 questions, but she knew this wasn't the time. No questions. Very well. Stand by for contact. End transmission. The line went dead. Cree sat in her apartment staring at the blank screen, wondering if she'd just made the best decision of her life or the worst. Her regular communicator buzzed again. Her supervisor, asking where the report was on that docking fee complaint. She typed out a quick response saying she'd have it done by tomorrow. Tomorrow. 72 hours. 3 more days of normal life before everything changed. She walked to her window and looked out at the station's main corridor. Thousands of people moving through their daily lives. Shopping. Working. Laughing. Completely unaware that somewhere out in the dark, people were watching for threats they couldn't imagine. Cree understood now why Jake Morrison had looked so tired. Why Grant carried herself like someone who'd seen too much. This knowledge, this awareness of what lurked beyond the light, it changed you. There was no going back to comfortable ignorance once you knew the monsters were real. But someone had to watch. Someone had to be ready. She turned away from the window and began composing her letter of resignation from Galactic Intelligence. She wouldn't submit it yet. Not until after the contact was made. But she wanted it ready. Some doors, once opened, couldn't be closed again. And Cree had just walked through one. 2 weeks later, Investigator Cree submitted her resignation to Galactic Intelligence with no explanation beyond pursuing new opportunities. Her supervisor tried to talk her out of it, reminding her of the promotion she was in line for, the pension she'd be leaving behind, the career she'd spent 12 years building. She thanked him for everything and walked out of the office with just a small bag of personal belongings. Nobody looked for her. The resignation was clean, professional, and completely voluntary. Just another mid-level investigator moving on to something else. It happened all the time. 3 days after her last official day of work, Cree stood on the observation deck of a small neutral trading station on the outer edge of Council space. The station catered mostly to independent freighter crews and the occasional smuggler looking to avoid main transit hubs. Not the kind of place a former Galactic Intelligence investigator would normally visit. A ship approached the docking bay below. Not the unmarked vessel she'd seen before, but something equally unremarkable. A mid-sized transport that could have belonged to any of 10,000 small shipping companies. It docked quietly, drawing no attention from station security. Cree's communicator buzzed with a simple message. Bay 7. Airlock 3. She made her way through the station's corridors, carrying everything she owned in a single travel bag. 12 years of life on various stations and postings, and it all fit in one bag. Maybe that should have felt sad, but instead it felt liberating. No anchors. No ties. Just the choice and the courage to follow through. The airlock door was already open when she arrived. Colonel Lisa Grant stood waiting, looking exactly the same as she had 2 weeks ago. Professional. Unreadable. Dangerous in a way that didn't require weapons. You came, Grant said. Not a question. Just an observation. I did my research. Everything you told me checks out. The vanishing events are real. The cover-ups are real. Something is out there that the galaxy doesn't know about. Cree adjusted her bag on her shoulder. I can't go back to investigating docking fee complaints knowing what I know now. Grant's expression softened slightly, something that might have been respect crossing her features. Last chance to change your mind. Once you step through this airlock, your old life is over. No going back. No retirement parties. No medals. Just work that matters and recognition that never comes. Cree thought about the names on that list Grant had shown her. Hundreds of people who had died in silence to keep the galaxy safe. Someone has to do it. Might as well be people who choose to. Good answer. Welcome aboard. The ship's interior was bigger than it looked from outside, designed with hidden compartments and spaces that didn't show up on standard scans. The crew areas were functional but comfortable. Cree counted maybe 8 other people as Grant led her through the corridors. Some human, some alien species she recognized, 1 or 2 she didn't. They ended up in a common area where Jake Morrison sat studying a holographic star chart, a cup of coffee steaming on the table beside him. He looked up when they entered and gave Cree a slight nod. Told you she wouldn't let it go, he said to Grant. You did. Grant gestured for Cree to sit. Jake's going to brief you on our current situation. Consider this your first day on the job. Jake expanded the star chart, highlighting a section of space about 300 light-years from their current position. 2 days ago, our monitoring stations detected quantum distortions in Sector 22. Same signature as the silence, but different pattern. Stronger. Cree leaned forward, her investigator instincts kicking in immediately. How much stronger? About 30% above previous baseline readings. Could be nothing. Could be the silence adapting. Could be something new entirely. That's what we're going to find out. Another person entered the common area, a human woman maybe in her 30s with short red hair and the kind of scars that came from surviving things that should have killed you. She carried a data pad and moved with the same predatory awareness Cree had noticed in all of Grant's people. Latest updates from command, the woman said, handing the data pad to Grant. 3 more monitoring stations picked up similar readings. Whatever's happening, it's coordinated across multiple sectors. Grant studied the data, her jaw tightening. Timeline? Unknown. Could be days. Could be weeks. The pattern doesn't match anything we've seen before. Jake finished his coffee and stood up. Then we'd better get moving. Cree, you'll bunk in compartment 4. We jump to FTL in 1 hour. I suggest you get settled and review the briefing materials Grant's going to send you. You've got a lot to learn and not much time to learn it. Cree found her assigned compartment, a small but efficient space with a bunk, storage locker, and desk. A data pad was already waiting for her with dozens of files marked with security classifications she'd never seen before. She started reading. The files contained information about the silence that went far beyond what Grant had told her. Detailed engagement reports from Phantom units over 15 years of operations. Analysis of the quantum distortions and what they might mean. Theories about where the silence came from and what it wanted. None of it was comforting. One file caught her attention. A personal log from someone named Rachel Torres, dated 18 years ago. Cree opened it and began reading. Day 47 in deep space. We encountered it again today. Lost Morrison's team, 3 good people gone in seconds. The silence doesn't kill. That would almost be better. It just erases. One moment they're there, the next they're not. No bodies to recover. No closure for families back home. They'll be listed as missing in action, and no one will ever know what really happened to them. Sometimes I wonder if we're fighting a war or just witnessing an extinction. But we keep going because someone has to. Because if we don't stand between the galaxy and this thing, who will? Cree closed the file, her hands shaking slightly. This was real. This was what she'd signed up for. Not investigations with clear answers and tidy conclusions. Not villains who could be arrested and tried. Just an endless watch against something that defied understanding. A chime sounded throughout the ship. The captain's voice came over the intercom. All personnel secure for FTL jump. 15 minutes. Cree strapped herself into the acceleration couch in her compartment and felt the ship's engines powering up. Through her small viewport, she watched the stars begin to shift as the ship oriented itself for the jump. Somewhere out there in the dark, something was stirring. Something that had been contained but never defeated. And she was heading straight toward it with a crew of people the galaxy didn't know existed, fighting a war that couldn't be acknowledged. Her communicator buzzed. A message from Grant. After we jump, meet me in briefing room 2. Time to learn what we're really up against. Cree sent back a simple acknowledgement and watched as the stars stretched into lines of light. The ship shuddered as it punched through into faster-than-light travel, leaving civilized space behind. Jake Morrison passed by her compartment, pausing at the open door. You holding up okay? Ask me again after the briefing. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Fair enough. Welcome to the Watchers, Cree. Hope you're ready for what comes next. Are you ever really ready for something like this? No, Jake said quietly, his fingers unconsciously touching the tattoo hidden beneath his sleeve. But we do it anyway. Because someone has to stand between the light and the dark. Might as well be us. He continued down the corridor, and Cree was left alone with her thoughts. Behind her, the civilized galaxy continued its daily business, safe and unaware. Ahead of her, in the spaces between the stars where the map said nothing existed, people were watching. The monsters were real. But so were the guardians who kept them at bay. And Cree had just become one of them.